Thank you, Anne. All right. Thank you, Anne. And good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, thank you, thank you for joining us. I know it's a beautiful day, and you're taking time at the end of the day to join us, so we truly, truly appreciate it. Before we get started with our amazing panel, I just want to take a moment to thank Contra Costa County Bar Association, ADR section, Alameda County ADR section, and Women's section for getting the word out on this program. I cannot tell you how important this is, that this message, this program reaches a wider audience. Because no point doing a wonderful program if we are not reaching a wider audience. Because the whole point of our program is to attract new and diverse candidates into the ADR section. So if we fail in getting our message out, we're not going to see any meaningful change. So if you're here today, or if you're watching this recording later, and if you know of someone who would like this program or can benefit from it, please feel free to share it with them. Our previous program is also on YouTube, and I think it's on the Bar Association's website as well. We have it on our LinkedIn pages. So please feel free to watch those and share it with as many people as possible. Today's program will be similar to the panel that we had last time. I'm excited. As you can tell, just to introduce quickly our panel, and then they'll do self-introductions. We have Tamara Lange from U.S. District Court. We have Sharon Godbolt from DFEH, Laura McNamire from FINRA, and Michelle Brown from the ADR office. She will be joining us later because she had to leave the court by 4:30, so she'll be calling in from home. And Mark is here, and he does not have balloon animals this time, so we will hold that against him. So at this, and just from the introduction, you'll know that the theme is the same, right? We are highlighting different individuals from really different backgrounds and different organizations. And this is again highlighting that there's not one path to become a mediator or ADR providers. There are many, many different paths. And there's so many different organizations that do ADR work that we might not come across in our daily practice. I know Laura will talk about FINRA. So many people have emailed over the last few weeks, like, we didn't know this. We got an email today saying, oh, DFEH mediation, I had totally forgotten that they have a branch that does that. So we are so excited to welcome you guys to today's program. And I'll kick it off to Mark so he can get things going.
Well, thank you. And I want to especially thank Palvir for being the driving force of putting this program together and this great panel. It's just wonderful to have you all here as part of the matter. And just to second Palvir's comment, just if you know anybody else who couldn't make it tonight and you think this might be interesting, please let them know. This will be posted on YouTube. Also, as we're going along, please use the chat function if you have any questions for any of our individual panelists or any of us. We really want to make this as much as possible informal and a conversation as we did last time. And as I described, I had plans to make balloon animals, but for environmental reasons, I can't do that anymore. I'm trying to figure out how to make balloons out of hemp. And when I do that, I'll be back with it. But again, just following up, we have a fabulous cast, and we were going to just ask each person initially tell us where you are, what it is you do. We'll circle back as the program goes on to Palvir's point. I think each of you, just like most of our audience, all have different sort of paths to where you are. And if we can underscore something through this process, it's just what Palvir said. There's no one way to do this. There's multiple ways, bring different levels of expertise. And I'd love each of our panelists to provide their path or their background. And I'll just go vertically looking at the list that we have. Tamara, may I start with you?
Yes, no problem. We had a lovely pre-call, and I was really delighted to meet some new to me colleagues. So I'm really glad to get to do this work with Laura and Sharon and Michelle when she gets here. And thanks to you, Mark and Palvir. There are a lot of folks I see on this meeting who are on the Northern District's panel. I work at the Northern District of California, the federal trial court here, and I am the ADR director. So that means that I do some mediation, a tiny bit of E&E. I don't do E&Es very often. And I work with all of the mediators who volunteer their time to the court to serve on court mediations or early neutral evaluations. And I think we have about 5 or 6 people here who are on that panel, mediation panel. And I think we have about 200 currently who are active neutrals. We just had some big shifts, so we've dropped that number down some. And we do our trainings every 3 to 5 years, so that's there's not an open sort of cycle of when the next training will be, and that gets announced when the court's ready to do a new training and bring new people on. But it's always a real consideration to make sure that we have folks from all different professional backgrounds to meet the needs of different types of cases that we get, and also to have different diversity of life experience, and also to have diversity across all types of life experience and racial, ethnic, sexual orientation, gender identity across all categories, because there's a real general challenge in the field. And our panel reflects that, of folks who often have gone on to become professional mediators, including a lot of the volunteers for our panel, are folks who have gone through big firm litigation background and gone to work as a judge and then retired and become mediators. And we have quite a lot of judges who serve on our panel and are very grateful for their time. But as a result, we also have a fairly white and a fairly male panel compared to the population of California, for sure, and even compared perhaps to the population of lawyers in California. So that's something that's on the radar for the court as a whole and for the ADR program as we go through looking at applicants. And we do have a pretty rigorous application process, and that's that process is I think our last time around we took about 1 in 8 applicants. It tends to be very senior lawyers. The minimum is 7 years of experience to be a mediator on our panel. And I encourage people to apply earlier in their career, depending on someone's background. It may be that it's a great fit. So that's a little bit about the panel and my work there. And we have a pretty broad array of cases. My background coming into this work, which I think was really the question here, I just extemporized about what I care about a little bit there. Maybe I was off task. But my background is actually pretty varied. I like being a generalist. I like about the mediation work I do that I can be a generalist. And I worked in a small firm, in a large firm, as a law clerk in the trial court in the circuit. And I also worked primarily in my career, I worked in nonprofits at the ACLU and the National Center for Youth Law. And I worked for several years for Santa Clara County doing creating a social justice and impact litigation program there. So I've essentially represented plaintiffs and defendants in commercial cases and employment cases, and done advocacy work for the LGBT rights and HIV project for the ACLU, and done all kinds of commercial and consumer cases for Santa Clara. So that's a really broad array, and that makes me love the work of being a mediator, because it means I have enough of a taste in a lot of different areas to be able to jump in and do all different kinds of cases. And I like that challenge. I like not having to be cabined. And when I first became a mediator, people told me, you have to pick and market yourself for your area of expertise, and you can't be a generalist. It doesn't matter if you actually are a generalist, you have to market your expertise. So I figured out a job where I don't have to do that, and I'm pretty lucky in that respect. So that's a little bit about me.
Well, that is a great introduction, and I'm sure we all have follow-up questions. I think for each of us, I'd like to circle back in a few minutes and ask more detailed questions about how each process works, including selection and the like. So Tamara, thank you for that. So we'll do the first level conversation and then come back to everybody. And again, please, as you're all listening to these great stories, throw things at us in the chat function. Sharon, can we transition to you and get the background story to get started?
Sure. Hello, everyone. So listen to Tamara. She has reminded me how I have forgotten a lot about what I have done. But anyway, I'm here to demonstrate how you do not have to be unique or have done anything special to end up being a mediation, a place that I am very happy to be at. It's DFEH, and that's where I've done most of my 8 years of mediation. I want to thank Palvir for asking me. She wants to make sure that there's some diversity in this field, and I agree that we definitely need to try to make it more diverse. I just want to drop this caveat that I do work for the Department of Fair Employment and Housing, DFEH. However, I am not here representing them tonight because in order to represent them, I was supposed to fill out a whole bunch of paperwork to be here. But she said, you just wanted to hear my journey. Well, I'll tell you my journey and drop a few nuggets about a place that I work, which I'm not going to mention again, but you know where that is, okay? I'm not sure if when you circle back, if you want me to tell more there or tell more now.
This is informal. We're going,
okay.
this is your floor.
Okay, so I started my journey in a small firm, you know, when I got out of law school, and I was enjoying it, like, hey, I'm a lawyer and I'm doing these things, and I did it for a couple of years. Then they closed. And then I said, okay, I knew I did not want to work for a large law firm. So I opened my own practice. Then as time goes on, long story short, I hated it. So I went back to where I was comfortable. I worked in HP before I went to law school. I just all of a sudden decided to go to law school. And then anyway, so I went back to HP, and then HP started doing weird things. So they started kind of closing down. And I went to several corporations, and what I was doing there was contract negotiation. What I had to confess to myself is I really did not like what lawyers do when they practice law. I don't really like to argue. I don't like to fight. I don't like to ask people for money. I don't like to charge them to help them. All these things are not good, especially when you're a solo practitioner. So I finally decided to do something else again. So after that, I went back into the corporations again, started doing the contract law again. Then I started getting bored with that. So went back to my own practice, this time really small, specialized, and I was doing family law. While doing family law, they asked me to do some pro temp work, you know, when you're mediating between the complainants. And I think they call it in the Santa Clara County, the pots and pans. So not the big stuff, but, you know, big arguments pursue after, you know, you want to get a divorce and decide you really want that washing machine. Like, okay, do you really want to spend that much money on a lawyer, try to fight over that? But anyway, I discovered I like that. I like helping people settle it right then and move on. Then I also ran into a colleague that I went to law school with who was a judge in family law, and she begged me, Sharon, please come do some mediation of my family law cases before they get in the court. So I, you know, when they got in the courtroom, they could wrap it up real close and she doesn't have to draw it out. So I did that for about 1.5 years, and that was really good as well. Then I got tired with that, and then I took some time off. then a friend kept telling me, Sharon, you should move to Sacramento and do some of these type jobs. Well, the one that seemed appealing to me was the Department of Fair Employment Housing mediator position. Applied for that, interviewed for that, got that job, and I love it. So you can ask me more later.
Yeah, Sharon, so how long have you been with DFEH?
I'm going on my 8th year.
Great.
Yeah.
And so if you don't mind, provide an overview, like how many people do the kind of work you do for DFEH, and is it all regional offices? How's it set up?
So DFEH has mediators and attorneys in the Elk Grove office, which is the corporate headquarters, the Los Angeles office, and the Fremont office. There are about 12 mediators who do the mediation. However, they created a volunteer mediation group for DFEH, which you know, if you're interested in that, there's an application you can fill out and you'll probably get a call. And, you know, we're the largest state civil rights organization in the United States, you know, defending California citizens against discrimination and employment and housing and other areas as well.
Right.
And Sharon, we'll definitely be coming back to your volunteer program because we already had a question come through email. So we'll get to that later on. But I think people are interested in knowing more about volunteer work.
Okay.
No, I want to go, Palvir, you keep going.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I'm sensing a theme with you and Tamara, and I think it's going to continue with Laura, because you guys have both used the word I'm loving it, happy when it comes to this. So Laura, floor is yours. Tell us a little bit about where you are right now and what is it that you do.
Sure. Well, I will continue that theme. So spoiler alert. So I am with FINRA, Dispute Resolution. So for those of you not familiar with FINRA, we regulate the securities industry. So FINRA makes rules, enforces those rules, has the power to kick people out of the securities industry if they don't comply with those rules. As part of the mission of investor protection, market integrity, we offer a dispute resolution program, which is where I work. We offer both arbitration and mediation services. I work primarily in arbitration, and so I have been here for almost 20 years now, and I have a couple of my colleagues in the audience, so I will call on them if they want to chime in. But so, I mean, as far as my journey or my path, when I was in law school, I studied dispute resolution at Pepperdine, but not really knowing what I was going to do with that. And so when I graduated, I worked in private practice for a very short period of time, similar to Sharon, found that very quickly that was not a great fit for my personality and my sort of life goals. And so I had a mentor that I had interned for when I was in law school at the Department of Corporations, who had worked at FINRA previously. And so she encouraged me to apply, but not for a dispute resolution role, because I didn't even know that there was a program. So I applied for a regulatory role. I got a call from the HR department and they said, we don't actually have any openings there, but I think you might be great for the dispute resolution side. And so the rest is sort of history. Certainly very, very rewarding to be part of the solution and part of, helping people on the mediation side, come to their own agreements and settlements. On the arbitration side, getting a quick and fair resolution to the disputes that we see. It's primarily, or actually exclusively, securities disputes. And so we operate actually the largest securities dispute resolution in the country, forum in the country. And so we see investor claims, we see employment claims, claims filed by brokers against their firms, filed by firms against former brokers. And so those are the types of claims that we oversee. You can have an arbitration case and a mediation case run concurrently. So that's, a way that we try to really encourage mediation as a way to help parties take control of their own case. But if that doesn't work out, we obviously offer arbitration as well.
Great. Well, that's a great introduction, and we have a bunch of follow-up questions for all of you. But before that, Palvir, I know in the prior program you provided a little bit of background about your program, but if we could spend a few minutes, I think it would be great for you to provide your similar version of how you got here and what your program does.
Great. Those of you that didn't watch the previous program, as I keep saying, it is available online. But I started doing volunteer work with an organization called Congress of Neutrals. It's here in Contra Costa County. We provide free mediation in small claims, eviction cases, and civil harassment cases. I started doing volunteer work with them in 2014. I run the program now as the court mediation program director for them. I think I'm also the president or the CEO of that. The titles always escape me, but it's one of those roles. Over the last year, with the courts shutting down, and we tried to pivot to virtual platform, but the problem is that the community that we serve, there is a barrier, a technology barrier. Most of people that come into court do not have access to technology. If they have a smartphone, they might not have enough broadband or hotspot to really use our services. So we've been highlighting that, saying, this is what our community needs. So we kept providing virtual mediation even over the year. But now and this is totally a plug, so bear with me. So now we are really trying to prepare for the flood of cases that will be coming down for unlawful detainer eviction cases. Because people in our community, especially that I'm familiar with, so I can only speak to that, and I'm sure that's throughout the country, they have not been able to pay their rent because people have not been working. Most of in Contra Costa, actually it was throughout the country, there was a moratorium which is being lifted at end of June. So that means starting July 1st, there will be cases filed. So what we're trying to do right now is work with access to Justice Commission. And we're doing a pilot program in Contra Costa, and we're hoping to replicate it everywhere, where we are helping people fill out applications for employment, emergency employment assistance programs, because there is some money available there where landlords can get 80% of the money paid by the state, as long as they waive the remaining 20%. So we are doing everything, getting the resources lined up so we can help people fill out those applications and basically start mediating before the lawsuit is even filed. So we're starting the mediation at that point, helping them, directing them to different organizations that will fill the forms for them. And then if they don't settle, we'll still have mediators available in court so that you're getting a second crack at the case to mediate it. Because I don't think our courts are really equipped to handle the cases that we expect will be coming down. Just in our county, we're short 5 judges. So I don't think we are prepared for that. And I really hope it turns into a situation where what I've been saying for the last year just turns into the story about the boy who cried wolf. But I've been saying for the last year, the cases are coming, and I really hope I'm wrong. But my fear is that we will see a rise in cases. So we will be looking for mediators. We will be training them. The Access for Justice Commission, they will be training. So look out for blasts. These blasts will be going out from all the local bar associations. It'll be coming from, I think, State Bar Association as well. So there will be training at end of June. If you've never done UD cases, please don't be scared. There will be enough help there for you. So answer the call, please. When those emails come out, just read them, or just email me. If you have time, I will even take an hour a month. So if you have just an hour to volunteer, I'll fit you in somewhere, but yes, we will need help. So I will stop at that point because otherwise I can keep talking about Congress of Neutrals.
Well, I'm going to suggest we do another round where we take a deeper dive into how does it work in each of the groups. But before we do that turn, Palvir, remind the group, how did you end up doing what you're doing?
Well, I started off I had my own practice, started doing personal injury and employment law. Did that for many years. It was a partnership. And then after my kids, we moved from San Francisco to Walnut Creek. I took a year off thinking I'm just going to take a year off. I was trying to get rid of cases, but there were still some cases lingering. So I thought, okay, I've been sitting at home. And that year I really took off. I mean, I read romance novels. I painted, even though I'm not a painter. I went to Michael's and I bought paint supplies. Everything that I didn't get to do going through school, I did that. So then I said, okay, I need to get back in. So I took a mediation training, the 40-hour training. This was just to kind of get back in that mindset. Also, I was always interested in mediation, but I didn't think I could be a mediator because, you know, in my mind, you had to be white and male and older. So I took the course because it would meet all my CLE requirements for that 3 years. And also I can pick up some tools that I can use in my practice. I did the 40-hour training. It was over 5 days. And at the end, I was like, oh my goodness, I can so do this. I enjoyed this. This was, you know, all the mock mediations that we did, totally enjoyed it. And at that point, I was told that if you want to volunteer, there's an organization in Contra Costa. You know, just start with them. They have a mentorship program where you pay and you can get hands-on experience with the mediator in court. So I did that thinking, you know, that's fine. You'll just another tool for my toolkit. Little did I know I would never leave that organization. I just stayed there. I enjoyed it. And my career basically took a different path. So I do mediations full time now. Never went back to my own practice, never want to look at another litigation case as my own. I enjoy just coming in and looking at other people's litigation cases. I don't want to wait for a courtroom being available anymore where all my experts are lined up, but you're told there's no courtroom. I don't want to wake up at 2 a.m. going, what was the statute on that case? So I'm enjoying mediation.
Excellent. Well, I think hopefully all of our audience is seeing what I'm seeing, which is there are multiple people that have found what they really like to be doing, and we'll hopefully continue along that theme. So maybe we can get a little more granular. Let me recycle here in terms of, Tamara, you were mentioning the federal court program, which I am part of. I didn't get anything in the mail today. I keep waiting for the letters saying it's your time to get off the panel, but maybe it'll come tomorrow. But a wonderful, wonderful program. And you referenced what I'm well aware of, which is a lot of people applying these days. And so I think for the group's benefit, hearing a little bit more about the process, like if I scribbled correctly, that you ended up taking one of 8 people applying, so more demand than resources. So initially, what constrains the resources for the court? I know, but share with everybody else in terms of providing that opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, really the main thing there are 2 main things that constrain resources for the court. One is that we have a small program. I'm the only lawyer now as the ADR director. We used to have 3 lawyers running the ADR program and 5 staff members, and we now have 1 of me and 2 staff members. So just in terms of human administration, it's just a much tighter ship. We're the only district court that continues to have a professionally staffed program. There are about 8 to 12 that have a professionally staffed program in the country with an attorney leading the ADR program. Congress said everyone should, but since it's unfunded, nobody does. And we're the only one that continues to, or has ever assigned cases by I look at the case and think about who's a good fit for the case. So it's a system that's actually much more effective. It results in higher levels of satisfaction, both for mediators and for counsel and the parties. And I don't want to give that up. but it's a real constraint, and it means that I need to know the mediators well, to have that higher level of satisfaction, to be good at matching people. And the second factor I think is that I think that actually it's really important for people to be mediating regularly, to be good at it. And having, if we had 500 people or 1,000 people on the panel, and everybody mediated once in a blue moon, it's just not a very effective way to serve the court. And that's ultimately the goal here, is to serve the court and to give people an opportunity for a self-determined resolution through the court process, as sort of a multi-door courtroom, courthouse kind of approach. So people can come in and see this as one of their avenues to a just resolution of their case through the federal court system. And so one of my goals is actually to try and have people have both more mentorship in the program and more regular opportunity to mediate, because it tends to be quite sporadic. We do assign, it also has a benefit because I'm assigning cases based on my sense of folks, and I know people pretty well from our advanced practice groups. We have practice groups in the program that run monthly, and most mediators are now in a practice group. As of this month, we actually had a bunch of longtime mediators who've never been in a group who got invited for the first time. So we have new folks joining practice groups starting today. And a couple of people from today's practice group are actually here today. So that's really an exciting change for the program and a real opportunity for long-term development for mediators. But it is a hurdle to get onto the panel. And I think, I don't know if we're going to come to a question about this later, but I think it's really useful to think about how do I develop my mediation career with a lot of different avenues open, because you don't ever know how one avenue is going to lead you down and around in a circuitous way to a connection to the next. And so setting your sights on one avenue can be really limit you. And so something like volunteering to do unlawful detainer cases and doing 20 of those may give you a whole lot of information and contact with folks that you then find turns into something else. I know a number of mediators who did Hurricane Sandy mediations and went out to New York and did those cases in order to have a lot of exposure and do a lot of mediation. Folks who've worked on different state court panels to get a lot of experience. And I think some folks come to our panel and think and realize, oh, the way I can get a lot of experience is to do the high volume cases, and I don't really want to do those. So it's tricky, you know, you've heard us all talk about that we're happy with the work we do, but it doesn't mean that it's not work. And it is the reality that there are plenty of difficulties in being a mediator. And it's, in my view, the biggest decision about it is you're stepping into being around conflict much more than as a litigator. Because as a litigator, you spend a lot of time thinking about your case and designing your case and building your case and structuring things and sending information and doing discovery. And there might be a lot of conflict around that with your opposing counsel, but you're not spending the bulk of your time engaging with people who are busy shooting arrows at each other and other unmentionables they might want to throw on each other's doorsteps, metaphorically speaking. But that's kind of the reality. So if that's fun and you like the psychology of that, then it's a really, really enjoyable career. But if it's just being tired of litigation, I think most of the people who come into mediation for that reason, because they're sick of being litigators, don't end up as happy. Maybe Sharon and Laura will, and maybe Palvir will tell me that's not true. I like being a litigator, and I did it for about 20 years. And I will say that one of my colleagues whom I called and asked for a recommendation to be on a court panel said, you can't be a mediator. You're like one of the most aggressive litigators I know. I can't even picture you as a mediator. So there you go. I had to write the letter for him. And then he said, okay, this is all true about you. Okay, yeah, I could write that. I could sign that. So you never know. People don't always, people think a mediator means touchy-feely and super sweet, and often a little edge is needed too.
That's great perspective. And for what it's worth, I love being a litigator. I love being a general counsel. Both of those jobs were really hard. I won't go into the detail, but on a day-to-day basis, mediation can be as hard as anything you ever do, just exactly for what Tamara just said. Sharon, so question going on the same lines in terms of how DFVH is set up. We were talking initially, you mentioned there might be some volunteer opportunities. I assume some of the people that have dialed in are interested in learning more about those volunteer opportunities. So they've heard they can apply to Tamara, and it's like, well, if you're really lucky, maybe, but it's going to be hard to get on that panel. How do you get in the queue if you want to volunteer at DFVH, and what's DFVH looking for?
And Mark, we are not calling it that. We're just saying an agency that shall
an
not
agency.
be named.
Yeah, it's like the like what Prince had changed his name to, the artist.
Yes,
Known
exactly.
Well, if you were in a theoretical agency, Sharon, that you may or may not know anything about, how do you get your foot in the door if you want to do that?
And Sharon, you're on mute.
So I have a feeling that the people who are on a panel have gotten there many different ways. I've spoken to some of them, and some of them have spoken to people who are mediators who were then, referred to the program. Then I think the program became more formal. All I know is I did ask around a bit today, just in case this question came up, and I received a application which one would fill out. And I would be happy to send that to you, Palvir, so that if anyone is interested, they can fill that application. I have no idea whether there are many mediators, volunteer mediators or not. I just don't work with that part of it. However, I do know that 2 of them have now become employees of a certain department.
Well, that's encouraging. That's encouraging. Well, great.
Actually 3. Think of it.
Oh, that's even better.
That is better. And I know that my manager is quite happy that they exist, because we're in 3 locations, but we're for the whole state of California. And we're just not everywhere. I do some traveling, and I kind of picked my locations that I would do. But the LA folks, there's a lot in San Diego going on. And I'm not sure how often, because before, COVID, I could either do it live, do it in my office, do it on phone. And we even had a Zoom type thing that wasn't called Zoom at the time. But, how many times you want to drive to San Diego per week? Or other places in California where there are no offices.
Well, I guess I really don't know what I'm asking about here, other than if you're interested in volunteering, is there an opportunity to volunteer in different regions in California, or would you be, working?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think wherever you are, if you fill out this application, if you're not in one of those 3 locations, you're probably in a good location to be on the volunteer panel.
Great. And so I bet everybody's doing everything today via Zoom or some other tool like Zoom still.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Although I really prefer to do my mediations nowadays through telephone, because I do not like, the only Zoom I'll do is the first 10 minutes where we're introducing everybody. Because when I go to talk to one side, I don't know how long I'll be. And I don't want you to be sitting there in front of your computer waiting for me to come back, right? So I'd rather they'd be on their cell phone and free to move about and do whatever. And then I'll call them and then start with them. And then the other side can do the same. Otherwise, you're stuck there in front of your computer, possibly, unnecessarily, in my opinion. So
Yeah,
I do a lot by phone.
it's a little bit of juggling to figure out how to do that. And I think different people have adapted different means
Right.
to make that work. And maybe we can talk more about how people are adapting as we go on. But before we get that, Laura, if you're willing to fill us in a little bit more about your theoretical organization, which I've heard is called FINRA, in terms of if people are interested in either working at FINRA, I don't know, are there volunteer opportunities for being a neutral at FINRA? And if so, what kind of criteria do you apply?
Sure.
And Laura, I also, from our call, I learned that you guys have your own training for arbitration as well. So if you can also kind of touch upon that, I thought that was fascinating.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'll talk about becoming an arbitrator, and then I'll talk about becoming a mediator, because it's two completely separate tracks. So to become an arbitrator, we have been doing quite a lot of recruitment for our arbitrator roster, really focusing on diverse candidates. So women, racial diversity, gender diversity, LGBTQ, those kinds of things, because it's really important that we have the roster to reflect the parties and the public. So because of that, we've been out to over 100 different organizations to do recruitment. It's free to apply to become an arbitrator. As Palvir said, we provide free training to become an arbitrator, so you don't have to have any kind of experience in the securities industry or any training coming in. So the only requirements that you have to have are 5 years of business or professional experience, and then the minimum requirement of 2 years of college. So the most of our arbitrators are attorneys, other professionals from all walks of life, but we do provide everything that you need to become an arbitrator. So, so I think that's really, good news for the audience, that it's simple from that perspective. To become a mediator is a little bit different. You have to come in already trained and experienced with a good settlement rate that you can report. We ask for letters of reference, so that's something that's important. Our best mediators, what we're really looking for are people with securities experience. That's important to our party, so it's totally different. And if people come to us asking, about becoming a mediator and they don't have that experience, what we will often tell them is we suggest you become an arbitrator first and get the experience that way. Spend a few years, in that roster, and then gain the knowledge that you need to become a mediator.
That's fascinating.
Mark, can I just say that an organization that I'm familiar with, I'm looking at the application, and they do want you to already have the 40 hours training. Looks like they do want to know about your legal experience. They ask for bar license and degree, and they are looking for the references as well. They want you to talk about the actual mediations you have done. So
great, that is terrific. And we went past, but just I'll take a step back. Tamara, the federal court program has its own 40-hour training program.
Yeah.
It is excellent, and I don't just say that because once in a while I help, but it's good anyway. But the but it's
we put up with Mark.
No. But it's a requirement. It's the best requirement you can ever experience in terms of the quality of the education, and it's free, right? So to continue that thread, Palvir, talk more about the training that the Congress of Neutrals provides, and I understand that is also free as well.
No, it's not
No.
free.
Oh,
We are always looking for money. So
Whoop.
Congress of Neutrals does 2 trainings. We do 40-hour training, which we haven't done in a year or so because we never went online. So that's one thing. Yes, it's nonprofit. So when we do offer that training, it's a lot cheaper than private trainings. The second program that a lot of people that have done 40-hour training, they come to us. It's called an MMP program, as a mentorship program where you get paired up with one of our trainers, mediator trainers, and then you go to court with them. So the way the program is set up is it's 6 sessions. The first 2 sessions, you observe the mediator do a mediation. Then the next 2 sessions, you co-mediate with that mediator. And then the last 2 sessions, you will mediate and the mediator trainer is there to give you feedback. But that's not written in stone. I've had people come in that after the first training, they're like, I feel comfortable. I can mediate the next one. So I just sit back and let them run with it. And I only jump in if they get stuck or if they need feedback or something. I've had a couple of people that come in and they just weren't comfortable and ready. So, they co-mediated 4 mediations. And only on the last one, they said, okay, I'm comfortable now, but just stay in the room and just jump in. So it's really up to people, like where they are on their comfort level. Because many times they have never even been in a mediation as an advocate. This is a complete new world for them. So I just really go by case by case. And then if somebody's completed that MMP program and they quote unquote graduate from their program, and we get a good recommendation from the trainer, then we invite them to volunteer with us. So at that point, we ask them which location they'll be interested in because we have court in Richmond, Martinez, and Pittsburgh. So at that point, we work with their schedule to see when they would like to volunteer and which calendar. For our small claims and civil harassment, we do not require that you have to be an attorney. For our unlawful detainer, we do require, and that's just because that is such a substantive heavy law, and there are a lot of forms involved and stuff like that. But that if you have a background in unlawful detainers as a paralegal or you work there in another capacity and you're comfortable with that, then it's fine. Then we'll talk about it on case by case basis. But this is one of the only trainings that I know around there where you get hands-on training in an actual case in the courtroom setting.
Great. And if I can take it back to Tamara, you mentioned earlier, Tamara, there one of the requirements was a minimum of 7 years, but so 7 years as a lawyer. So
yes.
do you have people in your program that are not practicing lawyers as well, or consider them? Or
Technically, the program is open to non-lawyers, but functionally, we don't have any mediators any longer who are non-lawyers. If you are a lawyer, you must be a member of the California Bar to be on our panel. And we have in the past had a few non-lawyers. And philosophically, it's open to non-lawyers, but functionally.
I have an appointment for tomorrow at 11:45, but something just came up and I need to reschedule.
Ms. Brown, can you please mute yourself?
Let's see,
Oh, no,
what
no,
is,
Ms. Stevens.
I don't know, Sunday maybe?
Whoever's the host should be able to mute her.
Okay, I think Ann did the.
I think Ann has that
What
role.
time do you have Saturday?
Not yet.
Okay.
In any event, we'll.
Okay, let's
Let me
see.
see if I can do it. I don't think I'm the host. Palvir.
If you make me a co-host, I can do it.
Maybe-
I'm working
maybe
on it.
2:30?
Okay.
2:30, yeah.
Again,
Okay. All right,
please.
thanks, bye-bye.
All
all
done.
right, here we go, all done.
We're all
Chat.
As you probably all figured out by now, this is not set up as a webinar, but it really is a Zoom meeting. So we're all live. So if you're not speaking, if you could turn your microphone off, that would be helpful. So I'm sorry, Tamara, I think we stepped over your description.
No problem. I think we were just talking about the 7-year minimum and lawyer over non-lawyer. So, but functionally, we don't have non-lawyers on the panel any longer. It just turned out to be that it took a lot more supervision and management time and time administratively for our staff to get approval to have a non-lawyer appointed. And we just don't have the bandwidth to do that. So it's nothing against the non-lawyer mediators, but FINRA is the place to go among us.
Actually, Mark, I see Michelle Brown is able to join us. I just wanted to introduce Ms. Brown. She is with our ADR office in Contra Costa County. And thank you, Michelle, so much. Michelle was at work all day, and then the courtroom has to be closed. So then she actually drove not fast because, you know, we don't want any trouble. And then she hit traffic, but I truly appreciate that you're here. I just wanted our audience to know that what Michelle does, there's a counterpart of that ADR office in pretty much each county. So we wanted to highlight what it is that Michelle does and her office does. And also, she's always looking for volunteers because the demand is so high. So I want Michelle to kind of talk about what it is ADR office does and how can we help. Michelle, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
I can.
Okay. So as y'all know, Michelle Brown, I talk to everybody on the phone or by email mostly, but so basically the ADR office in Contra Costa County, I'm kind of new to this still. I was brought in about 2 years ago under Lisa Swafford, and then she got moved out and I got moved into her spot, and now I'm handling it all, including family court services. So I have a whole bunch of hats I wear. So with the ADR part of it, I'm the only person that answers all the emails and does all the referrals and everything. So basically the way our program works is we receive a referral for mediation from the courtroom. And then at that point, I will send out a selection date of when they have to have those forms returned back to me, as well as the completion date of when the mediation needs to be done by, along with a list of all of our mediators that are on our panel. And the list consists of the names, phone numbers, email addresses, as well as their hourly rate. And what the parties have to do is when I send that out to them, then they pick off of that list based off of whatever type of case it is. And then they will make the phone call first to the mediator to make sure that the mediator will be available and any extra fees or deposits or things such as that. And then at that point, the parties should return the form to me. And then at that point, that's when ADR, I send out the notification of who's been assigned. And then basically that's how it goes from there. That is where we're basically saying that the ADR is covering the 2 hours free plus the half hour of the prep time. And then after that, the parties are responsible for paying whatever that attorney or mediator charges.
And Michelle, what are the requirements to get on that list, the list of mediator panel that you have?
So I brought my paperwork here, so I have to read off of it. So basically, to be on our mediation panel, they don't have to necessarily be an attorney. They can, as long as they take the basic mediation course in the beginning, they can be on the panel, as well as, sorry, I'm trying to get there. As well as able to show that they've, been involved in some mediations. It's a 40-hour comprehensive mediation training that they have to be a part of, or they, per our local rule, they can fill out a supplemental application, and basically they would have to have referrals. They would have to have mediated before even co-mediate, things such as that. And then I just kind of process them as I get them and verify that they're good with the Bar Association. And then we take it from there and get them on the list.
Okay. And one last thing, I know you also have a discovery facilitation program.
Yes.
Attorneys, even though they're not mediators, they can kind of play that role, and that helps the court cut down on law and motion hearings. So can you talk about that program? And
Yes, that's the big one. That we have a lot of people that are on our mediator panel that are also on our discovery facilitator panel. And I kind of did a little bit of statistics on that. So basically they would hear discovery facilitator matters, or facilitator matters, and then discovery. And then what they would do is spend no more than 4 hours on a case. If it's going to exceed the 4 hours, then they should be terminating the assignment, and then it goes back into the court's hands at that point to handle it. At current time, we have about 71 discovery facilitators on our list. 22 of them handle probates. I have 8 that send me emails and say I'm not available till June, September, depending on whatever their availability is. I have 19 that haven't responded to any of my emails since the beginning of the year, so I wouldn't really call them active. And it has grown into, in the beginning, when I first was helping out Lisa in this matter, we would get a request in, and it was periodically, and then we would take that request and then we would send it out to one mediator, and then we would wait 3 days. And then if we didn't get a response back, then we would move on to the next mediator. It has gotten so out of hand with requests that I threw that out the window, and I send a bulk group of requests out to multiple discovery facilitators at one time. I just blind copy everybody and send it in one email. And so for the month of May, I have received 40 plus discovery facilitator requests. I have had 8 discovery facilitators rejected. So once they're rejected, they have to go back in the pool, and I have to start looking all over again. So then I sent out over 60 plus emails looking for discovery facilitators, and I have to track all of that. And so then I basically have gotten to the point where I'm trying to just find better ways of streamlining this. And I've found different ways since I've taken it over to streamline it, but I would definitely take any suggestions that anybody would have, because I have talked to my director about it, and we are going to go to Judge Austin about it and try to discuss maybe making some changes to the local rules, because it's out of hand as far as the completed. From January 1st till June 1st of this year, there have been 140 completed discovery facilitator requests. Out of those, 57 have settled, 20 have not settled, 5 have partial settlements, and 58 settled prior or the assignment terminated after I spent all that time looking for somebody.
all right. You can add 143, because I'll be sending you 3 that are completed. But
that's the biggest problem is they don't tell us. They'll put in their request, and since I can't get them assigned out so quickly, they just end up building up. And then what happens is 2-3 weeks down the road, I'm still sitting there with these requests. And then by the time they get assigned out, oh, we settled.
So I think what I really want to highlight, and I've been working with Michelle and Lisa in that office, and I know how hard they work. at this point, I just want to tell our audience that if you've had your 40-hour training, or if you've done a lot of litigation with discovery, motions going back and forth, this is an opportunity where you can practice those skills that you learned in 40-hour training, right? Because this is, in a way, a mini mediation that you're doing just for discovery. So this is another way of getting that experience and helping the court at the same time. Because the cases that settle in the facilitation, they don't take up the docket time for law and motion. So that's why I just really wanted to highlight Michelle's work at a local level to say that we have a program here, volunteer if you have time, pick up more skills here. And we'll be sending you an email with an attachment. It's just a resource list we kind of put together. That's just listing all the court websites in our area and other organizations. And it's not a complete list by any means. So everything that Michelle talked about, it'll be on that link. Just click on it, it'll take you there. Same for Alameda, Santa Clara, Marin County, all of them. So thank you, Michelle. It just,
Thank you.
I know our audience always talk to you, but it's always great to put a face to the name. So really appreciate you making the
Thank
time
you.
today.
And
Okay.
Michelle, if there are follow-up questions specific to your program, can they reach out to you by email for?
Absolutely. Yes, just send an email to the ADR would probably be the best email. Or either the ADR or the ADR facilitator email. And I think that probably should be on the resource
Yes.
list. Okay.
It will.
Right.
And then once I receive that, I definitely respond back and I will send out applications, whatever. I grovel a lot, so.
It's great work you do. So feel free to send emails.
Okay.
We don't mind.
Okay,
you.
thank you.
And I couldn't agree more with Palvir that to do this work, to volunteer, not only helps the court, and it's very obvious they need the help, but it really is great practice opportunity. I sit as a judge pro tem in San Francisco on occasion on discovery matters. And I always find my mediation training is always sitting on my shoulders. And I'm sitting in most of those hearings trying to solve the problem, not declaring who wins and who loses, but what is it you really need? Let's figure out the solution. And which to me is another theme of this program is the value of the ADR training, no matter what you do, whether you're going to be a mediator, you're going to be an arbitrator, whether you're going to do discovery facilitator work. But I'm curious from the panel, because I know you've gotten into ADR through different paths and also different times. But have you found, the question I would love to get everybody's feedback on, have you found the ADR training has had other applications or benefits to the other work you do? Because Palvir, do you want to jump in? I know you have that orientation. Easy question.
Actually, I'll let Laura and Sharon go first because I'm sure you guys are tired of hearing me. So Laura, if you can take this chance.
Yes, please.
Sure. I mean, I think, like you were talking about, Mark, I think no matter where you are, what you're doing, whether it's career-wise, at home, with your relationships, whatever, I think those mediation skills are incredibly useful. And so, I use them with my team in my office, because whenever there's more than one person, there's going to be some kind of conflict. And so really coming in, like you said, and kind of getting to the interests of both parties, or if there's more than two, and trying to come up with creative solutions that's going to meet everybody's needs. I think those are invaluable skills.
Great.
And
Tamara
Sharon?
and Sharon, yes, please.
Yes, I agree. In fact, I refer to myself as the wizard because I mean, when you can just resolve these issues in a day, it's so helpful. And that's everywhere, every organization you're in and at home, or anywhere there's possible conflict, those skills are so useful. And and having such a variety of opportunities, types of issues is helpful as well. Because if you only do this kind all the time, that might be what you're focused on. But, settling the family dispute may help you in family law also, or vice versa. So, you can never go wrong with this skill.
So Tamara, you work with a hypothetical organization, also known as the federal court, where there's.
Mine doesn't have to be hypothetical. Everyone knows I can't speak for the court, and I'm immune for what I do on behalf of the court because it's work related and I have judicial immunity. So I don't mind if you say I work for the Northern District of California.
So let's talk about mediating, because you have a lot of different interest groups and people there and different experiences and level. So do you borrow any of those mediation skills to work your magic with outside of the formal mediation?
Well, let me answer the question in a different way first, and then maybe I'll come back to that one. So I was thinking as you all were talking about where else you can use these skills. I was thinking about my trajectory. So this is maybe to come back and more properly answer your very first question today, which is when I first did my initial mediation training, I had just left Santa Clara County Council, where I was a lead deputy and creating this impact litigation program for the county. And before that, I had worked at the ACLU, so I had done a lot of public interest lawyering, essentially. And I had also worked at firms and done other types of work. But I went and I did it because I was focused on a family need that needed some immediate attention. And I had some time, and I'd always been interested. And I took an initial mediation training and a half. I did one 40-hour and one 20-hour within a month. And then I did a bunch of mediation training. And then I got a call to go to interview to go to the National Center for Youth Law and do some program design and think about what kind of priorities the organization ought to have. And that was a real passion area. So I went back to doing nonprofit advocacy. And I really was fascinated to find how differently I looked at the work I was doing. I did a lot of preliminary work on representation as class counsel of kids in immigration detention at the time. This was about 8 years ago, right as the border crisis was the first round. Border crisis was heating up, and we went and did a lot of in-facility work. And it was really interesting to see how differently I perceived the staff and Border Patrol folks that we were working with, and the Department of Justice folks, including those who've become pilloried and have personal crises as a result, who were my opposing counsel in that litigation. And it was really interesting to see how differently I approached the relations with opposing counsel. And I know Mark probably has about 20 talks on this topic about how you relate to opposing counsel as a litigator. And really, the most sophisticated litigators have always done this, regardless of mediation training. But I think mediation training really helps people take that set of skills to help people communicate with one another and bring them inside to be a more effective communicator, a more effective listener, to care more about other people's perspectives. And right now I have a mom call, so excuse me a moment.
And now, Mark, just to go back to answer your question, I get to sit as a pro tem every now and then as well. And that's when I literally go back to the 40-hour training, the first exercise that you do in that training, active listening training. I literally go back to that. And it is amazing because people, when they come in, both sides are really emotional. They have their set of facts, and that's what they believe in. But all it takes is for me to really listen and kind of tell them that, yes, I'm hearing you, I'm listening to you. And I have seen situations actually de-escalate by the time they leave the courtroom. Yes, I'm not going to rule from the bench because it might, fall apart in the hallway. But even at that point, they just giving people that feeling that they've been heard, they have their day in court. I think that goes back to my mediation training. Without that training, I wouldn't have the skills yes, we all know, like, yes, you need to be a better listener, all of that. But in the training, they actually do these exercises that forces you to really pay attention to that, because as attorneys, we are problem solvers. As an attorney, the IRAC rule in law schools, it gets built in. So when we start listening to people, we're already issue spotting, we're already saying, what is the fix? What's the conclusion, right? And now it's like we go through our head and we don't know we're doing that. So in mediation, that's the first thing they break down in mediation training, that when you do that exercise, hey, stop, don't fix this. You're not here to fix this problem. Just listen to what they're saying. So I thought that was the first thing I took out of that training. Unfortunately, I cannot apply that to my kids, because especially over the last year, because they listen to me in lectures, they listen to me when I teach. So the second I start doing that, they're like, yeah, you're doing that thing to us. So it doesn't work.
I bet we've all been called on that.
Exactly. But it works across the board, not just this. So that's why I always tell, there are two things that I always encourage people to do. When somebody approaches me and say, should I go to law school? I'm always like, yeah, if you are not going into debt and you have financial means, go to law school. That necessarily doesn't mean that you will be practicing as a lawyer, but I think that's a great field. It opens up other avenues for you. So I always encourage people that if you're thinking about it, go to law school. And the other thing I always tell people, if you're an attorney, do the mediation training, even if you don't practice as a mediator, because that makes you a better advocate for your client. When you're in court, if you've gone through the training, you will know how to interact with a judge, how to interact with the opposing attorney, and how to really showcase your client's best interest. So those were my 2 cents. I just want to remind everyone, please, if you have any questions, put it in the chat. Otherwise, a whole bunch of mediators, we will keep talking. So if you have questions, keep putting them in the chat, please.
And on that front, thank you, Tamara, for providing us a link for information to get to apply to the oh, no, this is for the Contra Costa Court, sorry.
Yes.
But I think, Palvir, if I'm correct, we put together some resource information for the first iteration of this, and I think you were going to update that for this version. So there'll be contact information, not just to find out more about Contra Costa, but other Bay Area courts and the federal court.
Yes, all in the list, and it'll be going out, I think, tomorrow or maybe Monday. I don't want to put too much on Anne today, but and as if they have anything else to give, we'll just be sending one email out next week with the list.
And there's some minor variations, Bay Area County to Bay Area County, but there's more similarity than differences, if I recall from looking at that list, in terms of the expectation, if you want to apply to Alameda County and Contra Costa, San Francisco, is that there's typically sort of an expectation of a certain amount of experience, mostly as a lawyer. There's some expectation of training, if they're not providing it to you, that you already have the training. And then some of the courts do require that you have some prior experience, but I'm not sure if that's across the board. So please check all those opportunities out. We didn't mean to exclude any of the counties. We just thought we'd get started here with what we have.
And one thing I just want to say right now, and we get emails, we got some after the last program. We didn't highlight a single provider for 40-hour training. We didn't put that on our list either. The thinking, and yes, it could be a twisted way of looking at it. We have quite a few incredible providers in Northern California. So you cannot go wrong if you go with any one of them, depending on your availability, your financial situation, and all of that. So if you just search 40-hour training in the area, you will come up with the providers that we have. So that's the only reason it's not on that resource list. Nothing else. We're not hiding the ball. It's just that those are readily available. So just depending on where they fit in your schedule. Like I still take Laura's the arbitration training because I am like so interested in that now. But again, depending on when they provide that training.
Mara?
I was just going to say that I do think it's useful to think about, in choosing a mediation training, to think about what your strengths are and what you hope to develop, because different trainers have really different styles and approaches to mediation. And actually, I think it's really helpful to think about doing training. If you know your style and you know yourself a little bit, but you just haven't done a training, it's really helpful to think about doing a mediation training with someone who's a little different from you. And vice versa, if you are brand new to mediation, it's helpful to think about doing a training with somebody who's going to give you kind of the broad brush and some of the basic listening tool skills that are mostly part of people's programs, but you want somebody who's good at that. And most people the programs are probably fairly similar, actually. I think I've done 3 of them over the course of my career. I've taken 3 of them. I've taught many as well. And I really think it makes a big difference how you resonate with the teacher. And so I encourage people to make a call, like just make a cold call to the person who's going to run the training and have a little conversation with them about what their philosophy is, what their approach is, ask to see the syllabus. And it does help. There are lots of good people, as Palvir said. I agree with her. And also, I think finding the one that's right for you is really important, because you're going to spend 40 hours with folks, and you want to be with somebody that feels like a good fit and is going to boost you.
That's great advice. I could not agree more. And it's partly, at least my 2 cents is, it's partly a function of who you are. And to me, one of the great parts of being on the federal court panel and going to the monthly meetings is the opportunity to experience a wide variety of people who have different sensibilities and views of how they do the work. And I don't think the goal of those meetings is we're going to convert you to our way of doing it or convert her to this way of doing it. It's really just develop an appreciation of the broad arrays of skills we bring, and different people approach the process differently. And to me, that's really kind of a freeing sense that you don't have to follow one particular model or do it the way it's taught, but to figure out what resonates with who you are to be effective.
If you want to be a wizard like Sharon, then you have to know that there are 10 ways to do it right and 1 way to do it wrong, right? There are ways to do it wrong, ethical breaches, etc. But there are a lot of ways to do it right. And then you can maybe start thinking about what it means to be a wizard in your world.
Yes, thank you for that. I'm just grateful that I did not do it right out of law school, because I got so many experiences that I was able to bring to the table with me as I mediate, and just my life experiences, period. Paula said she wanted to make sure, that some diversity is interjected. I can tell that I have some parties that are so happy to see me because they didn't expect to see me. And they're happy that I'm there because they think they can skip at least a part of their explanation of the story. And I'm happy to hear that and be there for them. But on the other side, don't be so happy that you think I'm going to do something different because we kind of look alike. But also it's been helpful to me because I've had a very diverse background. I've been on the legal aid board. I've been the board president for community legal services. I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where in the summers I worked in the US steel mills. And, I've just had a diverse experience, and each mediation can be different, and because of the background, and I'm grateful to be able to do that for them. There's one where I had to mention the US Steel because he just kept going on and on about how you wear hard hats and you can't wear airplanes. I'm like, yuck, I worked at United States Steel Mill. I know what you mean, I got it. And he was surprised and happy to hear that. But I think that what I also bring, and you can find out for yourself, I surprise myself a lot of times because I'm usually so, easy to cry, emotional about some things. but I was able to toughen up and, help them get through it and resolve it. But you may be different for each case. You just tweak it a little bit. And it's kind of fun for me. I feel like I'm an actor at that point. So you see how I'm having fun in a variety of ways. I'm just saying you can too.
Well, and you brought up the issue of humor, which of course I don't have it right in front of me. There's a great book I just came across written by two people. One of them was a friend of one of my daughters. I'm not making a plug, I don't get a commission. But the main theme of the book is the importance of humor in being effective, including in business, including in life. And not like I'm going to tell a joke, but the ability to, I think it's really more incorporate your human self, which I think is so essential to what we do in terms of getting that person across the table, whatever, to listen to you. It's one of the challenges, I think, to some extent, when we've been forced over the last 15, 16 months to do this remotely like we are, and it takes more work to do. But it's making that context so they make sure that they haven't just been heard, but really heard, and do that as well.
Mark, can I just say, because I'm not sure when we're going to end, but I just want to say that, all my experience as a mediator has been with someone that's not paying me. And, once they start paying you as the mediator, I'm not sure, but there probably are some differences there. And I'm not speaking to any of those paid experiences.
What do you think they might be? I'm curious, Sharon, if whether it's volunteer or not volunteer.
Well, I think that part of me is, when you're starting to get some pushback and stuff, and I'm like, well, maybe you do that or can do that or think that when you're paying $7,000 for this service, but you're getting this one for free. And, all we're asking you to do is take a little class or something like that. I just think that when people are paying you, they possibly act different as well.
Interesting. Other thoughts on that, Tamara? You deal with the whole spectrum.
Mm-hmm. Our program is hybrid, so we ask people to donate to the court prep time and the first 4 hours of a mediation. And so probably about, I don't know what the numbers are now because I haven't done a recent polling, but historically about half the panel has just donated all their time. So it's a pretty big mix. And then there are folks who are trying to build a practice and they charge for their time. So it's a mix. And I've done both private mediation and one of the things I like about the court mediation is that it is justice oriented. There's no tallying, like, did I get you to settle for my settlement rate as a private mediator? Right. And it's more oriented toward self-determination of the parties. And I think the private mediation world is a little more oriented toward people are hiring me to get it settled. And there's a bit of a get it settled for you and by hook or by crook, which is not always the most savory. And I think that encourages things that I don't think are appropriate for mediators to do. Saying one thing in one room and one thing in another room to make people afraid so they settle. I think the purpose of mediation is as much clarity as you can get, as much understanding as you can get of your own case, your own motivations, and those of the other side or the other multiple parties, and to be able to make sound decisions on that basis. And I personally feel like it's harder unless you have high moral character. It's harder to do that as a private mediator. But on the other hand, the private mediators I really respect, I think bring that to their private practice, and they just say that to the parties. If they say, if you try to trick me, then you're shooting yourself in the foot, and they let people be responsible for themselves. Or they say, if I'm going to tell you what I think. I'm transparent. I work in both rooms openly. Or they say, you trust me on the process. I'm going to try and guide you through it. So it really depends back to the individual. It really is find your style, find who you are as a mediator, and be sincere. And that's far more effective than trying to figure out what a mediator looks like and what does a good mediator look like, private or public.
And actually, I just wanted to bring Laura in on that topic. Laura, I know that for your arbitration, you had and I might be completely wrong, you had the public arbitration and then the internal arbitration. Am I categorizing it correctly?
I think you're talking about the different types of arbitrators that we have, two different
Yes.
types. One has no affiliation with the securities industry and the other does.
Okay. Do you see the difference in whether, I don't know if satisfaction is the correct word, but people buying into one versus the other more or better results in one versus the other?
Well, so just as a quick background, the way that the program used to be set up is that in a panel of 3, you would have 2 public arbitrators, so never having been affiliated with the securities industry, and 1 non-public arbitrator, someone with a background in the securities industry. And several years ago, in response to what we heard from investors and investor counsel, it was really, really important to them that they be able to choose all public arbitrators for their case if they wanted to, because there was a perception that the industry arbitrator may somehow be biased toward the industry. And so since then, we have allowed that to happen in industry cases. Many of them do select all public arbitrators, but we still send them a list of the industry arbitrators so they can choose that if they want to. And sometimes they end up choosing the industry arbitrator based on, you know, what they like about their background or their education or other cases or what have you. So I think it's really specific to the attorney or to the party and how they're feeling. And it's also specific to the arbitrator and kind of what the parties are looking for.
Thank
That's
you.
great feedback. Palvir?
I think we're like at an hour and a half. So what I was going to propose is that if everybody can kind of give us your last thoughts, and then we can see if audiences have any questions. Sharon, if you can give us your thoughts or any advice for somebody coming into the field or thinking about the field, any do's or don'ts or anything you want to share with us at this point.
I think I kind of just gave my last thoughts, but I just think you should come in and try it, and especially if you are coming from a diverse background, to be there to help the people get through. It's a great feeling to be able to solve those problems in a day. All my mediation, not all of them, but most of them, like 99% of them, are done in a day, less than 8 hours. And that's a good feeling to have. And if you have those skills, why not use them?
Thank you, Sharon. And Laura? I'm just going by the screen as it's set up on my end.
Oh, sure. No, I'll reiterate a couple of things. Number one, to become an arbitrator, Palvir, you mentioned the training. It's all online, so it's not something that you have to come in person and schedule that. So we make it very easy for people to take the training. You can look on our website, finra.org. I'll also be happy to send you the link. All you do is look for the section that says Become an Arbitrator. And I mentioned the real focus on diversity that we have for our arbitrator pool. Each year we survey our arbitrator roster, and we put all of those statistics on our website as well. So you'll see it in the same place. And so, you know, we've made some real strides in recent years. Last year in the area of women, we had 40% of the new applicants being women. And Asian Americans as well. African Americans, same thing. We had 14% last year. So all of that is on the website. There's still more work to do. I don't want to give the impression that the work is over, but it's so important that we really get a diverse roster of arbitrators. So just want to leave you with that.
Thank you, Laura. Tamara?
Sorry, I was thinking about other things I want to talk about and reading Malcolm's comments. I'm having a side conversation in the chat. So, you know, I don't know how much to sum up. I'm mostly interested in hearing what people what people are thinking about and in hearing any questions that folks have, because I think the most useful thing to do as you're developing a mediation career is to talk to mediators and ask questions and get lots of different perspectives and just be engaged and get to know folks, because there really is a network and it's helpful to be a part of it.
Right. And I just wanted to point out that in the introductions, other than everybody being happy, I also noticed that everybody mentioned a mentor or somebody I knew pushed me into it, or somebody I knew said, do this. So the idea that personally I take away from that, and I hope you guys as well, is it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to let your network know that you're interested in this field if they have any input, because we do not get to where we are by ourselves. And I know some people have a hard time asking for help, because then they think that they didn't get there on their own and somehow they cheated, or maybe that's just me. But that's not the way to succeed or to enter into a new field. So please reach out to anybody else in the field that you think that you want to get into. As I said in the last program, reach out. In the last program, we had opened it up for people to see if they want to be assigned a mentor, and at least 10 people reached out and we assigned them with the mediator, and it was like an informal thing. But the whole idea was that all it takes is one email, one phone call, just reach out and the help is there. Mark, anything else before we open up to?
Yes, sure. So consistent with what our approach has been with the first session and tonight's session, I think the more informal these conversations are, the better they are, as opposed to formal presentations. I'm going to talk for 45 minutes or anything like that. To just emphasize, this is a conversation. And along that line, don't overlook the possibility of just connecting with each other. I don't know who's on LinkedIn. I am. Please reach out, because by doing that, you'll find out when Tamara's doing another program, or I'm going to be doing something, or an article somebody's written. I think the more we can share from each other, the better. And of course, that's free. So it doesn't have to be, let's find the 40, I mean, you have to do 40-hour training to get in various programs. We all know that. But there's a lot of smaller nuggets you can take advantage of by just staying in touch with each other. So highly, highly recommend that as a step. I'm a huge believer in study of behavioral science, and I stumbled into this more than 20 years ago when I was in my GC world and trying to explain to myself how my coworkers were melting in front of my eyes. And when I was doing my, all right, I got mine too. And also trying to understand in some mediations, like, am I crazy? Or because everybody else sees the world completely different, led me down a path that I'm still on decades later, just reading more and more and filtering that into my brain process. So my only other two senses, don't feel like we're constrained by this lawyer stuff. Look beyond that for ideas. So here's mine. This is, I don't get a commission. Humor seriously. There we go. Just one of 50 books I've got behind me on the role of behavioral science and personality and thinking about that. But those are my 2 cents. Palvir, looks like we've got a couple of questions. I don't know if everybody can see the same thing or if I'm just getting individual messages.
Yes, actually, I can read it. Any words of advice for the non-lawyers seeking to transition into ADR mediation?
Open this up to the group.
I think, Laura, that might be a better question for you. I guess we can start with you. For your mediation program, does the only requirement is the 40-hour training, or is the JD or license required?
Yeah, that's a good question. So what I can do is send around the website. I just sent it to one of the attendees. about becoming a mediator. It doesn't look like you have to be an attorney to be an a mediator, but you do have to come in with the experience and the training, the subject matter knowledge, in the securities industry. So if that's something that you have as your background, then certainly, we'd be happy to talk to you. But again, as I stressed before, if it's not, you can always become a FINRA arbitrator and use that as a first step into the ADR world.
It's great feedback. So
I just want to say that when I was mediating for that family law judge, there was another individual who was there who was not an attorney who was mediating. I just think if you attended this class tonight, you have taken a big step towards to the places you need to go to be able to do the things you want to do if you want to mediate, especially if you're not an attorney. I mean, they have said it several places. You don't have to be an attorney.
that is great feedback. That's really what we wanted to demonstrate, Sharon, is it's just all different kinds of people can do this job well.
Right.
I got one question from Jonathan Pollan. Thank you for participating. It says, hi, Mark. It sounds like you are very comfortable conducting mediations on Zoom. I'm going to pause and say I wasn't. 15 months ago, I shook my head and said, oh my God. But more on that in a minute. How do you feel with the fact that when you were in private caucus with one party, sometimes quite a while, the other side is cooling their heels? Great question, great issue. I try as hard as I can. I suspect most of you do. Don't spend too much time in one room before you go to the other. And I politely say at the very beginning, we're going to talk for a while, then I'm going to go talk to the other side. We're not going to cover everything in the beginning because I think momentum is important. I've been there before as a litigator. I've been there before as a client. For 2 hours, the mediator's gone and you lose a lot of momentum. The other thing you can do as the mediator is find little homework assignments for people. So they're not just sitting around or checking their other email saying, hey, well, I'm gone. It would be helpful if you could look at that or do this. But I do try to keep the conversation going, being mindful of that. But we didn't really talk much about Zoom. I will just quickly say I've been converted. I used to hate the concept of not being in the room together. I look forward to meeting all of us in person when we can, but there's been so many silver linings, including getting in some of my cases where the participants wouldn't be able to rationalize sending the more senior people to come to the mediation because it's a 2-day travel thing plus the mediation day. With Zoom, it's so much easier for us all to dial in. And sometimes that has made just huge differences. Also working with sometimes people that are in different time zones, even different countries. So it's a mixed bag. It's a mixed bag. And I predict and hope we continue to use this tool sometimes and then be selective about where it would really make a difference to be physically there together.
And I was just sharing with Mark the other day, I mediated a case in person. If we hadn't gone through Zoom mediations, I don't think I would have been ready for this, but I was face to face with this person, but I cannot tell you what she looks like. I will not be able to pick her out of a lineup because she had her head covering, like older females sometimes wear this. She had huge sunglasses, like up to here, and then a mask on throughout. And these were dark sunglasses. So if I hadn't been doing Zoom mediations over the year, I don't know how I would have been able to kind of get her buy-in, really, connect with her. But like Sharon said earlier, that different side of your personality comes out in different mediations. You try to kind of roll with it. Yes, you keep the fundamentals of what you learned in training in the back of your mind, but your own personality does take over at certain points. You go with the flow. And we were able to mediate. Yes, it's, I almost got a hug at the end, but I had to say like, no, it's okay. We're in COVID era, so it's fine. But yeah, you just roll with it. And that's where your people skills really come in. And even with Zoom, like we were able to really connect with people. And in certain cases, I felt like we were able to do it more so because people are in their living rooms, in their sitting rooms or dining tables or wherever they are, they were comfortable. So we didn't have that hurdle of putting them at ease. They were already in their environment. So we didn't have that, that hurdle. That's just my thought on Zoom mediations.
That's great.
Any other questions? And if you have a question you don't want to put in the chat, you can unmute yourself and ask the question.
Doesn't have to be right on topic. While we're waiting for somebody to get courage and ask the question they came here wishing to ask and hasn't been addressed, I will say, contrary to what Palvir said about everyone having a mentor, I've had a lot of wonderful mentors who really supported me and believed in me. But as I said earlier, I had people saying, a mediator, what? It was like not a match in their minds that I could be a mediator. And I also had a lot of people say, which I think is, not unlike what people hear in general, oh, you really can't make a living as a mediator. You really can't do it. There are too many people out there being mediators. There are too many people in their post-retirement who are taking cases, and it's not possible to make a living as a mediator. And I think the conventional wisdom that I then heard, a little more nuanced version of that, is that it takes 5 years to build a practice and to have enough of a flow of cases to make a living at it as your exclusive type of work. And I worked independently as a mediator only for a few years, and then I came to the court. So I don't know how long it takes, but I see some of my colleagues, like Mark, who started mediating parallel to his work as a GC and parallel to his other work for many, many years, who once he became a private mediator, it wasn't all at once a full docket of mediation, but now he's in high demand. And the same is true for a lot of other people who've become top mediators in the Bay Area. And I think actually it has much more to do with whether you believe in yourself, and the mentor's role is just to give you the little nudge to do so.
And I also started during the Truman administration. Let's be clear about that. So do we have other questions?
I had a question about the Contra Costa Court going back in person. Yes, they're already back in person. One department had actually gone back in person about a month and a half ago. So now both departments 54 and 57 are in person. That means I'm scrambling to get all our mediators back in person. Now pretty much everybody's vaccinated, so people are coming back. So I'm going to keep my fingers crossed that everybody comes back. But yes, court is back in person.
Great. And Malcolm, you made the point that we all should make, is to thank the panel, and then of course Ann Wolf, who does all the heavy lifting here. Yeah. So I would like to thank the panel. I think there's an opportunity, again, if you want to follow up with any of us, I'm sure you can do it by LinkedIn or other contact information. And we're all, I think, willing to have supplemental conversations to help. Palvir, do you have a date for your next session, or is that still in the works?
That is still in the works.
All right. The idea is to have more.
I also want to really thank the panel. I know I harassed you guys and kept sending emails because I really, really wanted to highlight the work that you guys do. And I really thought this was a great platform where we can highlight your personal accomplishments and also the organizations that you work with, some of them which will not be named. So I really appreciate you guys answering my emails. It's not every day you get an email from somebody named Palvir Shoker and then you cannot figure out if it's a man or a woman. But I really appreciate that you guys answered the call and gave us so much time, not just today, but also in the pre discussion calls and that. So thank you so much.